This video is about equipping your kitchen. It's about utensils, okay? Now I had a one of my viewers, one of my subscribers that wrote in, and I decided, okay, you know, when people do requests, frequently I will do a show based on that request. And this was my viewer, JJ McFly. Oh, by the way, thank you for subscribing. Hey, thanks. I think, and by the way, so you'll know, kind of put this in perspective. He was replying to a video I did on how to sharpen your knives, okay, and that was just recently released. He says, hey, thanks. I think knives are the most essential part of the kitchen, making the cooking process easy or straining. Have you made a video of your kitchen utensils? What you use most and what can be omitted? I sometimes buy stuff which I don't use much, and sometimes I'm missing something and can't cook something because of my missing utensil. Do you have a show around what you have and what you use the most? I see you using a bit more exotic, at least nowadays, stuff like meat grinder or food mill, and wonder if I should be having stuff like this. But I am low on space and I don't know what is the most valuable to have at home, especially when space is a concern. Thanks. All right. JJ McFly, here is your answer. There's a lot of ways that you can, number one, pare down what you have to increase space. And so we're going to get in the kitchen in a minute. We're going to talk about utensils, what's practical, what's not, and how to make space where before maybe you didn't. Before I run into the kitchen though, I wanted to mention that when it comes to creating space, sometimes we have to do that. My kitchen is chock full of creating space. You see, when I got here, it was a very basic little kitchen. This is it's a historic building, so the kitchen is old. And back then, kitchens were, well, I won't say more larger, but they had space in them usually for a little table or something like that, and that's where people would gather. No, so that was not unusual, and mine was like that. However, the side that's laid out for cooking is just a sink with a little bit of counter on either side of it and a refrigerator, and then on the wall opposite was just a range, and there was nothing else. And so I needed storage space, and what I did was I came up with a way to hang things on the wall. I also then hung things from the ceiling. I also purchased a baker's rack. They have wheels. They're really practical. Baker's rack doesn't have to be in the kitchen. You can put it in a dining space or in a living space or another room that's adjacent, sometimes even in a closet. Baker's racks come in different sizes also, so think about that. Some of the other ways of expanding storage, you can think about this, what's called a buffet cart. When I was growing up, my mother and father had a large buffet cart, and it was nice. In fact, they had the builder build a special cubby next to our breakfast area where the buffet cart would push right back up into that cubby hole, a little space in the wall. Well, that buffet cart would roll out. It had leaves that would raise up. There was storage down underneath inside of it. And a lot of them are built that way. So you can have something that looks like a nice piece of furniture that you can use for decorating the room, but also gain storage from that. Also, workstations. They make workstations now for kitchens that do expand your space somewhat. So if you have a place to put like a cutting board, excuse me, not a cutting board, but a work table, you know, sometimes they have a cutting board top built into them. And sometimes also just a butcher block. If you've got space for just that extra little work surface, that can be very practical. Now, that in itself, by itself, doesn't provide a lot of extra storage, except maybe underneath it, but it takes a big footprint on the floor compared to what it delivers. So consider things like that. Now let's get in the kitchen. Let me show you some of the utensils that I like to use, what I use the most, what I think you could probably omit, and how to get the most out of certain items so that you don't have to buy a bunch of other items. So let me show you how I do it. Come on, let's go. I decided to stop and fix a cup of coffee. Hope you don't mind. As far as what you should buy for your kitchen, I can't tell you that. I can't say you need this, that, and the other items, because it'll be dependent on what you cook. For instance, if you don't actually cook any of your own meals, but all you do with your kitchen is just use it for baking occasionally. Let's say that someone else in your family does the cooking, the meals, but you only use it for baking. So the implements that you're going to need, other than what would be used for making savory meals, is the items focused for baking. You know, a turner that's used for turning fish, you might be able to use it for baking in some capacity or another, but generally it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. But a rubber spatula is a commonly used item for baking. You know what I mean? However, pretty much all kitchens, there are certain utensils that they just have, okay? Let me give you an example. Do you need a whole set of knives, a big block with a set of knives? Not really. In the kitchen, if you wanted to pare it down and get to basics, to bare minimum, you're going to need something for cutting large pieces and slicing and things like that, and something for paring. These two knives, just a paring knife and either a Santoku or a small chef's knife, are all you need in the way of knives. They'll get you by, they really will. You can of course expand on that and get more knives later when there's more space. But if it's just, you got to get it to bare minimum, these two will get you where you want to go. Let me talk for a minute about some other options when it comes to different implements. Let me pull this down right here. This is what they call a pan rack. Okay, they're really heavy, they're durable, they're very thick. Now this right here is what they sell at most big box stores. They call it a cooling rack. Now this is kind of thin and punky and soft. It's not sized well to fit in a lot of pans. For instance, if I wanted to put this in a 13 by 9 baking pan to roast a chicken, I wouldn't be able to use this. However, this pan rack, I can cool cookies on it or put it in the bottom of that 13 by 9 pan and roast up a chicken. Which means I don't have to have a roaster with a roasting pan if I've got a pan rack and a baking pan, okay, for, you know, cake baking pan. A little more practical, and you know those the glass Pyrex, I like using those. They're practical. So are metal pans. I have some rectangular steel pans also that are very nice. So you've got options when it comes to stuff like that. Right there, just by getting simple pan racks, we've eliminated the need for a roasting pan, the roasting rack that fits in the roasting pan, and the additional cooling racks for baked items. The pan rack does all of those jobs. So get 2 or 3 of them. They will nest easy, one back to the other, on a nail or something like that in your kitchen. So an easy way to get it out of your way. And again, this is just nails and some magnets. And to keep from driving too many nails in the walls, I hung wooden strips and used those to support these items that I want to hang up. I gain more space this way. I don't have to have as much drawer space. Now, other ways to pare down like what I've got. For instance, let's look up here, look up on top. Let me move here. If we take a look up here, we see here's a colander, and there's another colander, and I've got 3 different strainers, a small, a medium, and a large. Now, frankly, if I wanted to reduce the footprint on that, I can do it with this one right here. This one will act as a colander, okay? It'll drain off my pasta, I can wash my vegetables in it, it will nest nicely on the edge of a bowl. They're designed to do that, okay? So, the single item then replaces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It becomes the one that you need. I can also reduce another item in the kitchen. With that one item, I can take out this right here, which is a sifter. Okay, so boom, I get rid of this big honking sifter, get it out of my way, because I've already got the strainer, which will sift flour also. Boom, we're reducing our footprint. Okay. Should you buy a set of bowls that come with lids? Well, that's pretty practical, and that's kind of neat. These bowls came with lids, but believe it or not, in the kitchen, when it comes to kitchenwares, a lot of times things will interchange. Let me show you. This is the lid from Winco, which will fit that bowl, which is, if I remember right, what are these? The Cuisinart bowls. Okay, so there's that. Now I can also use, just a Cuisinart pot lid, or let me get another. Here we go. Here's a lid for a larger pot that's Winco. Funny thing, they all fit. Looky there. Isn't that cool? All right. Very practical. Your bowls then become something that can be lidded up or turned into a double boiler. You don't have to buy a double boiler. You need a bowl like this that will set on top of another one of your pots that you can use in that capacity. Like this. See how it floats in there? A little space underneath to create your double boiler. Very simple design, all right? Or I can go a little larger, like so. That's all that's necessary. So sometimes you don't need to buy that double boiler pan. You don't have to fill up your cabinet with that. You simply improvise. To improvise in the kitchen is kind of the key to everything that happens in the kitchen. We improvise a lot. So these are cool ideas. It is important to mention, if you're saving space, make sure you purchase bowls that are designed to nest. They make pots and pans that will nest. Or if you get your pots and pans with a hole in the handle, they will hang also. There, that one's hanging. All of mine in here are hanging. That gets them up and out of my way. They don't take up cabinet space. I have some hanging from above. Some are hanging up here from a shelf I've mounted, so extra hooks from that. When it comes to storing just your dishes, okay, let's think about this. Let's think about this. Where do we get that extra space from? Well, if I need extra space in the cabinet where I'm storing my dishes, then how about I take my cups and hang them from cup hooks from the shelf above. So my cups are now hanging above my plates from a neat item that they've been using for centuries, and it's called a cup hook. A hook we hang our cups from. Practical, all right? Very practical. So we learn how we can pare things down through creative thinking about what we use. Now, you mentioned, my viewer, JJ McFly, mentioned, I see you using a lot of equipment and wonder, is this something I should get? Like your meat grinder. Well, I do. I have a nice meat grinder, okay? But my meat grinder's a little bitty. Hang on, let me pull this out. So they make meat grinders that you can hand crank. They clamp on the side of your counter or your cutting board. Make sure that the clamp is wide enough for the surface you're going to clamp it to. Some of them aren't. You have to watch that. It's something they don't tell people. Mine is this little thing right here, this little fella, and it plugs right onto the front of my mixer. Okay. Now this is cool in that, number one, I do a lot of baking, so I needed a mixer. And this was a long time ago. 35 years ago, I purchased my first mixer, and I'm still using it. It's the one that you see used the most on this show. I have a second mixer there that was purchased 30 years ago. That was actually another family member. They don't use it anymore, so they gave it to me. So now I have two mixers. But the thing of it is I only needed the one. They last a long time, and if you get a brand that allows you to expand on what it does, then you can buy a lot of other things that don't take up as much space. Okay, so my mixer, they make a lot of gadgets for it. Not only do I have the meat grinder, but I also have a vegetable slicer and shredder attachment. I have pasta roller attachment, so it'll make sheets of pasta. I also have pasta cutter, so I can make spaghetti or linguine, and all I have to do is just plug it onto the front of my machine and let it go at it. There are other attachments such as a blender attachment that they now make. They also now make a food processor attachment. So those are electrics. Electrics take up a lot of space. I've got back here, I've got my electric blender right over here. Well, that takes up space, but I could just buy the attachment that fits on the front of my KitchenAid. Excuse me, I shouldn't have said the name. On the front of my mixer, and then suddenly I'm taking up a smaller footprint than that big mixer back there. It still takes up a footprint, but just not as much area. So by buying that one machine, I have one motor that runs many appliances. A little bit smarter, a whole lot fewer cords to have to handle and deal with. All right, so again, we're saving space by buying the right machine that's expandable. All right. My baker's rack, as you see, it holds a lot of stuff. I've got 8 cutting boards sitting there in a stack, okay? Cutting boards don't take up a lot of space, and they're really important, okay? You're gonna need your cutting boards. Other things that can be handy, let me pull something out here. Turners. We all wanna go out and buy plenty of turners, what a lot of people like to call a spatula. Okay, let's get right down to this here. Let me get this one. This right here, this is a spatula. This is a turner. This is a fish turner. This is a turner. Okay, this one's great for grilling, getting in deep on hot areas because of the long handle. But do I need all of that? Not really. This one right here will do the trick. This is designed to take care of fish. It's longer. It's designed to drain off oils and fats and to not break your fish as you handle it. But you can still flip a hamburger patty with the same turner, all right? And spatulas. Spatulas are very handy. They fit a small area. Some of them you can hang, but they're very important, especially when it comes to cleaning out your bowls. And if you're gonna do any serious baking, you're gonna have to have spatulas. You're gonna need measuring equipment. But let's be frank. 2 measuring cups, one that's quart size and one that's pint size, and some measuring spoons. Those items generally nest all inside of each other, so they take up a small footprint. But you're still going to need them. You're also going to need a scale. This is really important. Measuring supplies. A lot of recipes these days are being written by weights. And I'm starting to write my new recipes by weights. My cake recipes, the flour, the sugar, that's going to be by weight, not by volume. So you're going to need a scale. It doesn't mean spending a fortune, okay? You don't have to spend a lot of money to have a scale. This one was like $19.95. I didn't spend much money. And footprint, it can be stored on edge. Okay, so you can store that, slide it into a little narrow area, boom, you have your scale. All right, you need your thermometers. The thermometers, you don't need a big one. Get you a little bitty thermometer like this at the Chef's Thermometer. A digital instant read is the way to go, and you don't have to spend much money. This is a professional chef's thermometer that chefs all over the country, in fact all over the world, use this thermometer, and it's designed to hang on the sleeve or in their front pocket, whichever they prefer. It's usually a sleeve pocket. But small space does its job. You don't have this huge cumbersome item. I've seen some of the cooking thermometers I've seen are huge, clunky, cumbersome, weird looking things. And to me, that's all I need. Just that. So consider that. It doesn't have to be huge, but it's a necessary item. Thermometer, very, very important. like you mentioned, there's some dishes you want to make and then suddenly you don't have that item. If you don't have a candy thermometer, it's going to be hard to make peanut brittle because the temperatures are exacting of what you have to take it to. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess. Okay, thermometer is important. They take up very little space. Now, things that if you run out of drawer space, remember you can take a round item or a square item that holds utensils or anything else and put items in that. All right, so that's another way of handling storage. So nesting items, things that sit inside of one another. For instance, all of my bakeware nests. I take my pan sheets, they sit on bottom, then the cake pans, and then smaller cake pans, and then there's muffin pans that sit in those. And everything nests into a stack that's about 4-inch high. It's not much space for about 10 pans. Okay, so there's that. Remember, nesting is important. You're going to need something to mix with. Do you need 2 whisks? Do you need a little whisk and a big whisk and all these different sizes? No. Get 1 whisk. Get a decent medium-sized balloon whisk just like this. It'll do everything. This will do small jobs, light sauces in a small saucepan the same way. It'll do a large volume. You can do 10 eggs with this. You can do 1 egg with this. It'll do the job. All right, practical. So your whisks, yeah, you're going to need that. You're going to need spoons. Slotted spoon is handy, but again, it's not absolutely necessary. And frankly, as far as what I use the most, I use my tongs. I'll pick up a set of tongs 10 times for every once that I pick up a turner or a spoon. The tongs are infinitely practical. Don't have 1 or 2 sets of tongs. At least 3, 4 is nice, okay? Now I've got an extra long set for grilling, okay? For getting into hot areas. A lot of times when I want to pull a pan out of the oven, I don't use a hot mitt. I use tongs to just pull it and check the cake or whatever and push it back in. Tongs. All of the time, tongs. So these are some different ways you can consider equipping your kitchen. If you're space limited, you're obviously not going to buy 10 different styles of bundt cake pans unless that's predominantly what you're doing. And if you do, well, they're pretty nice looking things. Maybe you should just hang them on a wall someplace so that they become ornamental in addition to being the practical pan that they are. Bundt pans, neat way of doing it. So there's another way of doing things, as I mentioned, hanging things on the wall. You can hang things on the wall to be ornamental or practical. There's a lot of options when it comes to what you're going to put in your kitchen. But let's face it, a popcorn popper is pretty much a waste of space when you can use a simple saucepan. It's what I've done all of my life. Put a saucepan on the stove, a big one, a little oil in it, put your popcorn in the bottom of it, put the temperature right, lid it up, and guess what? When the popping slows, your popcorn is ready. Ta-da! All from a simple pan that you would normally use for everyday cooking. A well-equipped kitchen gets you around a bunch of useless electrics. Why do I need an electric skillet when I'm surrounded by skillets? Okay, I don't need that. Now, a waffle maker is a different thing. Waffle iron, you can, believe it or not, you can get a stovetop waffle iron. They take up a lot less space. But outside of that, not common that you're going to need that kind of an item. Do you need a hot sandwich press? Not really. You can heat your sandwich in a skillet or in a toaster oven. All right. Hard to get around a food mill. Go ahead and get you a food mill. They don't take that much space, and the work that they do is magnificent. It will reward you with sauces and the best mashed potatoes you'll ever get in your life. Get a food mill. You don't have to have too many strainers. You don't have to have too many bowls, but remember, things unexpected will nest. My strainer will nest in my bowls if my space doesn't allow for me to have things more spread out. Just that simple. I'm hoping that I answered most of the questions that you had, and that what I've put forth is helpful. Just remember, what you cook is going to dictate what you need in the kitchen. Do I need a molcajete in a kitchen? Probably not. They're nice for a lot of things, but frankly, I have other equipment that'll do the same job as my molcajete. So I don't have to have it. Do you have to have a garlic press? Not if you have a cutting board and a knife. Proper technique will get you what you can get with a garlic press. Boom. There's another item you don't need. Do you need a lemon juicer? Something to squeeze your lemons and push out juice? Well, if you don't have arthritis, probably not. Get busy squeezing those lemons, all right? It's not that hard. So, lots of options. Again, there's choices here. There's choices in the way we equip our kitchen and in how we lay it out so that it functions in a practical way. Space, talk about that for a minute. My mother, we always cooked in this cast iron skillet, this big black one right back here. She cooked us all kinds of meals in that, all kinds of breakfasts. I grew up eating out of that pan. Eggs, bacon, sausage, all kinds of wonderful goodies. She cooked us chicken fried steak in that pan. It was magnificent. And when she wasn't using it, she didn't hang it on the wall like I do. No. Mom would coat it with some lard, heat the oven up to the right temperature, put it in there. After so many hours, she'd turn the oven off, and there that pan set until it was needed the next time, or until she needed the oven. And she would simply pull it out of the oven, set it on the stove, and it would be out of the way. So that's where she stored the cast iron skillet, was in the oven. That works. It's where you're going to have to treat it anyway to season it. Why not just leave it in there? All right, so do you have to have a tea kettle? A tea kettle. Did I say tea kettle? Yeah. Do you have to have a tea kettle? No. You can heat your water in a saucepan on the stove, all right? Just heat it up to a boil and pour it off, all right? That's what saucepans are for. They're for heating liquids. They're good at it, so use it. You don't have to have all things fancy, but you can't replace a meat grinder with a knife. To grind meat, you have to grind it. And if you want home ground meat, you're going to have to buy a meat grinder or an attachment maybe for something else that you have. All right. Remember, recipes that we don't have all the equipment for, that's what gives you a chance to buy more goodies. It doesn't always work out that we have space for the goodies, and it doesn't always work out that we have money for those goodies. So sometimes we have to work on a workaround, another way of doing something that gives us the same result. Thanks for watching. Please take a look in the description box right down there. That's where you're going to find the links to Texas Cooking Today as well as my website. That's where you're going to find shirts, you're going to find my recipes, you're going to find other items that I provide there. That's sort of my outlet and my way of doing business here. Thank you for watching this. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, well, you know where they go. And thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Okay, put this up.